Hello, and welcome to Impacto AZ, a podcast dedicated to centering the Latinx voice on important issues of the day. I'm Jonathan Higuera, your host, here along with co-host Juan Rodriguez. Today, our show wades into the controversy of the National Football League's decision to feature Bad Bunny as the main Super Bowl halftime performance artist. The decision has led to a backlash from some U.S. residents that Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio, aka Bad Bunny, a reggaeton singer who's earned international and artistic acclaim, will sing primarily in Spanish. And some critics are also pointing to Bad Bunny's comments that have been interpreted by them as anti-American. So we're here today with Arizona State University distinguished law professor David Lopez to discuss some of the finer points of this ongoing saga. Thank you for joining us today, David.
It's great to be here, and it's great to see Juan Rodriguez. Juan, I've been thinking a lot about you, seeing the Toronto Blue Jays in the World Series. I remember that you were such an ardent fan back in the day. I guess we knew each other back in 1993 when we had black hair. So,
That's right.
Sorry it didn't turn out the way I'm sure you wanted, but it hurt. Certainly one of the best World Series I've ever seen.
It's great. Yeah.
Where are you now?
I'm at home in Colorado. I'm in Fort Collins right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's good.
This week I'm in Fort Collins. Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, it's good.
Basking in 70-degree weather, I might add. Yeah.
It's good to have the gang back together.
Yes.
And thank you, David, for mentioning the World Series, because that was an incredible World Series, wasn't it? I mean, at first I thought I wanted the Dodgers and I wanted the Blue Jays. Then by the end, it didn't matter to me who won. It was just great baseball, great drama.
Yeah. Because I was, real quick, I was really, I was kind of upset when the game was over, but an hour later I was over it. I just said to myself, that was a great series. I mean, it was just amazing.
Every little play, it could have turned it,
Yeah.
Every little bang play mattered in that series.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we jump into it, I can connect the World Series to the whole Bad Bunny controversy, because of course what we saw in the World Series are Japanese superstars and Dominican superstars and Mexican superstars, and we saw really the international face of the World Series. And it was just tremendous. And, people were watching that series, not just in the United States and Canada, but all over the world. And it really reflected the
Japan,
diversity.
Mexico, you name it, Venezuela, they were all represented.
It reflected the global reach of baseball. And we'll jump into it, but that's where the NFL wants to go.
Well, and speaking of global reach, I mean, we have an artist here who has a global reach, and Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, has said as much, that he was chosen because he brings such a diverse audience and a global audience that the NFL is seeking. So my first question for you, David, would be this, and it's something you mentioned to me once. You said you need to convince us why this isn't a frivolous debate to have over Bad Bunny being the Super Bowl singer, because there's a lot going on in the world. We all recognize that. So why is this one not frivolous?
I don't even think it needs to necessarily be a debate. I think it's a teaching moment, and I think it really is an opportunity, for people to learn about the rest, the full United States, the history of the United States, and really understand that. And, this is a fallacy that everybody falls into. We look out our back door and we think that's the world. But I think this is a reminder that the world looks different depending upon, where your back porch sits, right? And so I just think there's a lot here that we can learn from each other. Obviously, there's been a lot of heat that's been generated over Bad Bunny's selection. I think the most important thing to remember is that this was a business decision by NFL, and frankly, it was a pretty shrewd one.
Right. Well, speaking of the backlash that followed, they have submitted a petition, I'm not sure to who, but it had over 100,000 signatures on it. So that's a pretty significant backlash. President Trump has commented on it, how it was a terrible decision. So this is, I guess we can't take it lightly. The opponents, you'd like to say, oh, come on, grow up. It's a big world. We know that you don't have to speak English and have a certain phenotype to be considered an American. So, and besides that, Puerto Rico is a territory of the U.S., for God's sakes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump and Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, both weighed in, and they both said essentially the same thing. They're like, "Who's Bad Bunny? I've never heard of him." Right? And I think that what that kind of illustrates is that we all walk in our own circles, and it sounds cliche to say we walk in our own bubbles, but Bad Bunny is really one of the most streamed and listened to artists in the world. And he has been for several years. He's number 2 on Spotify the last couple of years. 3 years ago, he was number 1. And so he's just a recognized artist worldwide, but also in the United States. And I think that the NFL is trying to go global. They're trying to almost replicate what FIFA has done with soccer. They're trying to replicate the World Series, and they realize that they need to expand their market. And that's why they are holding games in Brazil and Mexico City and London and Germany. And then on top of that, according to NPR, according to the NFL, the largest growing demographic of the NFL are Latinos. And there's a contract with Netflix to broadcast the game in Spanish. It's being broadcast in Spanish worldwide. And I certainly understand because, I don't pay attention necessarily to what's going on always in other countries. But I think that, what we see here is NFL is saying, we want some of that Bad Bunny magic. Like we want to be, in some respects, Bad Bunny because Bad Bunny has a global appeal that we want to copy. And just because this person or that person hasn't heard of Bad Bunny doesn't negate the fact that Bad Bunny's a thing and he's a worldwide phenomenon, right? And he's an American, right?
Well, that's right. That's right. And let's get into that here in a moment on the status of Puerto Rico and talk about how that's germane to this issue. But let me stop you there and talk. The global reach is one thing. The reach in the United States is another thing. I was just looking. There are 68 million Latinos here in the 50 states and Washington, D.C., and that doesn't include Puerto Rico, according to the 2024 census analysis. We also have 44.9 million people who speak Spanish at home, and that's over 5. Who knows how many you would add if you included the babies from 0 to 5 that are coming up. So there's a pretty significant audience for Bad Bunny and reggaeton and Latin music in general right here at home. That's going on right here.
Yeah, no, I think no doubt. And this past year, the NFL has actually made an effort to target the Latino audience with their Por la Cultura campaign, right? So what this does is it kind of reflects, kind of a tension between electoral politics that's played within kind of a closed circle, and I think a broader issue of cultural production worldwide, global production worldwide. And that's where the NFL plays. Like the NFL is not dependent upon, certain constituencies of voters. People vote by watching it or not watching it. And that's something that happens regardless of citizenship status and regardless of nationhood status. And NFL wants to get as many viewers as possible. They don't really care about whether someone's a citizen or what language they speak. They want to be they want to be Bad Bunny, and that's how they make their money, right?
What was the comedy troupe, the Chicano cultural group?
Culture Clash.
Culture Clash. It reminds me of their old joke with, "Hey, I'm going to go to the Cesar Chavez rally. I'm going to roll it, but I got to wait till the Raiders are done playing." I mean, Latinos are big consumers of the NFL.
We used to say that in Arizona too. That we'd go to the protest, but the Suns are having a good season, so we can't go out there.
Yeah.
Juan, you were going to say something, Juan?
Yeah, well, the phenomena of Latinos loving gridiron American football And I use the term gridiron to distinguish it from regular football sometimes in the conversation because it gets a little confusing. But with the NFL and the other forms of American football, gridiron football, the NFL, it's always their ambition goes past 30 years, to be a global phenomenon. They've been planning this forever. They had back in the 90s, or I think it was the 90s, they had the NFL Europe, where they had a developmental league in about six or eight European cities, and it shifted from year to year. It was an experiment. It worked out. It didn't work out, but it left an impact on Europe. There are still leagues in Europe.
They were thinking globally a few decades ago.
Yeah, and then
this is just a continuation of that.
And then the international games, like in London and Germany and
Mexico
Tokyo,
City,
and Mexico
City.
Well, let me tell you about Mexico City. Like, and you guys know, you grew up near the border there, in Nogales, and my experience is more in Texas.
Yeah, Phoenix is a borderlands. Phoenix is a borderlands of the borderlands. So,
well, what I'm saying is Nogales is not that far, and the reach. The border is an hour and a half away from Tucson. Mm-hmm. And then my experience was through Texas, Eagle Pass, Texas, from San Antonio to Eagle Pass. Mm-hmm. I remember spending my summers in Mexico and seeing summer football leagues in Mexico on the border in Piedras Negras, mm-hmm. And this is in the 70s. Mm-hmm. Okay. They already had developmental leagues, high school leagues, organized football back then. But the point I want to make is when the NFL rolled out, their international campaign, what they did in places like Germany and London, they would have because all this is planned years in advance. They have teams working on their marketing teams, and in the year following up to whoever's playing, whatever match is taking place, they have community events called, American Football 101, where they have it at bars or at, social events, and they teach, they have there's beer, there's food. And from what I understand, they just show people, through videos what American football is about, the rules. And this is heavy marketing. And Mexico was the only place you didn't have to do football 101 because in Mexico City, and Monterrey and other places in Mexico, they already know the game.
But how about this point? I want to raise it now, and let's address it. The majority of people watching the Super Bowl, and I don't have the data to back this up, but I feel pretty good about saying are going to be English speaking, right? And since they are English speaking, do the critics might not have a point here that they'd like to see an English speaking performer at the halftime show?
Well, look, I sent you. I think this sort of gets back to one's point. I think I think the fastest growing market is the Latino market. Anyone who's been on the Mexican side of the border knows that there are two teams that they love down there. The Raiders also, always, like the Raider Nation, because of Tom Flores, because of everything, because of
Jim Plunkett
location, and the Dallas Cowboys, America's team. You're going to see in Piedras Negras, you can see a lot of Dallas Cowboys shirts. And so
my family.
I'm not sure what the demographics are, but I think NFL has basically concluded that the Latino market and the international market are the fastest growing demographics, and they want to tap into that. They want to be the World Series, right? They want to be FIFA, and right now they're not, right?
But do you think Bad Bunny maybe overplays his hand a little bit when he says on Saturday Night Live as host that, he says something in Spanish and then says, "You didn't understand that? Well, you have 4 months to learn it." I mean, come on, this is still, for all it's worth, most of us are viewing and consuming this game and these performances in English.
But let's go back. The insistence that someone speaks Spanish, someone speak English is not genuine, in my opinion. In 1968, in Game 5 of the World Series between the Tigers and the Cardinals, Jose Feliciano sang the national anthem. He sang it in English, but he sang it on an acoustic guitar with a little Latin flair to it. And people went bonkers over it. It was in English.
I go bonkers over him anytime. I love that man's voice.
No, they went bonkers in a negative way.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Why,
I mean,
why
what's
is this
Oh.
accented
what's
foreigner singing my anthem on a guitar?
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Oh my.
So,
but but but
so
Lamar Kendrick performed. He's got a pretty good rhyme, and he's pretty fast, and it's hard to understand what he's saying. A lot of these performers, it's just
good point.
really super difficult to understand what they're saying. And I think the beautiful thing about Bad Bunny performing is that it opens up the world to other people, but also opens up the
Mm-hmm.
country because he's he's an
Yeah,
American citizen.
Mm-hmm.
I just got back from Colombia, and they had a big concert in Colombia. Guess who was playing? Guns N' Roses. You think everybody in Medellin who went to Guns N' Roses understood what they were saying? No, but the music spoke to them, and they took the effort to learn what these songs meant, and they attracted that.
right,
That's why you have
Um,
these artists that are always playing in Latin America that are predominantly English speaking artists. And what happens is
right.
that the consumers are like, man, I really love that music. Let me try to figure out what it is they're saying. It's like
mm-hmm.
Shakespeare. Like, who understands Shakespeare until you sit down and start reading the annotations, right?
Right, right. And if I'm
And I
going to
think
be
Bad
real about
Bunny,
it, I don't understand what 90% of the artists of today are saying anyway. But
well, yeah, I
so
mean
yeah.
that's it. I think that there's a lot of universality if people just spent their time listening to the music. Like Bad Bunny sings a song called it's called Caerita, right? And this is about a young woman who's very shy and very quiet until she starts drinking, right? Um, and certainly anybody in the United States in the ruralist areas know that person, right? That's a universal theme. The person that sort of flips their personality and becomes something else, right? And so I just think people need to kind of open it up and listen to what he's saying. And then I think there's a deeper issue in terms of not just the lyrics and the language of the lyrics, that the idiom of reggaeton is something that was developed in the U.S. Canal Zone by Panamanian workers on the U.S. Canal, and that was brought to New York City and Puerto Rico. And so it's as American as apple pie, folks. It just
Mm-hmm.
is. Like, it's the
Right.
idiom. And just because you haven't heard of that, right, doesn't mean that other people in the United States not only have heard of it, but they love it. Like, I'll look at certain charts and I'm like, who's that artist? Like, for this, there were a couple of country artists that I had not heard of, and they're like number 4, number 5 on the Spotify chart. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm just not walking in those circles, but I don't impugn that just because I haven't heard about it, they don't exist and they're not great, and people don't love them,
Yeah.
right? And so I just think it's an opportunity to understand your history and your country better. And Bad Bunny, I just think this moment just provides an incredible teaching moment.
And for the sake of this
Yeah, you're right.
conversation, not that I agree with what some of the more conservative groups are saying, but they're
No,
also
you're
raising
always on the
issues.
fence, John.
No,
Come on,
I'm
man.
not. I'm being a journalist, and I'm
I know
trying
you're
to
trying to be
raise.
your reporter, play both sides of the
I'm
devil's
trying to
advocate.
raise issues that I've read about, right? And one of them is that his lyrics do get very political, or can be, are interpreted by some of these more conservative groups as anti-American, which I don't believe holds any water. But that's also something that's being used as an argument for a replacement, which I don't think they're going to have any success with, according to Mr. Goodell.
Yeah, I mean,
You're right.
I think there have been 3 issues that have been raised. One is that one is that he's not American, which he is. So that's just a very ignorant, and very ignorant.
Okay, let me stop you there before you go over the 3 points. What is the status of Puerto Rico, so that our viewers and all of us are clear? Because of course they are American, but they don't get to vote in a presidential election.
Okay, and we talked about this before, and so I'm gonna put on the law professor hat, but I gave you both permission to tell me to shut the f up. So I'm gonna try to make this. I understand that.
We'll be
I
looking for that
I
opportunity.
understand. I know. I mean, it's not like you guys haven't done it before, but I want to. I want to be a little. I want to be a little professorial, right? But I'm going to try to keep it. I'm going to try to keep it real, right? I'm going to try to bring the law to the people
Go for it.
where it belongs.
Bring it. Bring
And
it.
so Puerto Rico was a Spanish colony, and for about 2 weeks in 1898, it finally achieved a modicum of freedom. And what happened is that the United States entered a war that in schools it's taught as the Spanish-American War, but what it really was the War of Cuban Independence, right? It was a part of a long Cuban independence struggle where they had been fought for their independence to decolonize from Spain for all this time. And so the United States shows up. It's all about remember the Maine. The Maine was blown up. Nobody knows why, but that was the U.S. reason to go in. And the U.S. had tremendous naval powers, so they were able to defeat the Spanish pretty fast. And then in the process, they grabbed Puerto Rico and they grabbed the Philippines too. So then Puerto Rico became a U.S. territory, right? And so, any questions before I go on? Because this is where I'm. Okay.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. All right. So
I have a question.
I
have a quick question.
Yes.
Is that how we acquired Guantanamo as well?
Oh yeah. Okay. So, now that's a different podcast. And so Cuba had nominal independence, but there was something called the Platt Amendment as a condition of independence, where the United States could go into Cuba anytime it wanted, and they had to let us use the base at Guantanamo. And so there was some like nominal fee that we still pay, and they send the check back. Okay, but it's all the same thing. This is all what they call the age of empire. This is the United States expanding globally, right? And so what happens is that that people are like, okay, well, we got this territory in the Philippines too. Like, you always have to keep the Philippines in mind. This is when Hawaii became a territory of the United States. So we're like just completely expanding. And it's like, okay, what are they at? Does the flag, the question was, does the Constitution follow the flag? You have a flag in Puerto Rico. Are now the Puerto Ricans are entitled to all the rights under the Constitution? So a bunch of people like me back then, but with gray beards and whatever, they sat around and argued that. And they're like, well, that can't possibly be. Like, we can't possibly start saying that Puerto Ricans and the Philippines are Americans and U.S. citizens. So there was a case, okay, and this is where I'm going to be the most professorial. There's a case called, several cases, right, that decided this issue called, they're called the insular cases. And all these Supreme Court justices are like, does the Constitution follow the flag? And they were, let's say they were woke challenged, right? Because what the Supreme Court said is stuff like this. It is obvious that the annexation of outlying and distant possessions, grave questions will arise from differences of race, habits, and laws, and the customs of people, and the differences of soil, climate, and production, which may require action on the part of Congress that would be quite unnecessary if it were contiguous territory. In other words, because the climate, the soil, the racial composition, they couldn't possibly be part of the country. And so,
I'll have to stop you there, that you don't use any more of those long quotes like that, because that is
but I will.
too professorial.
I want to use this one because this is
that's
still
a joke, by the way.
This is still the whole thing. It's like the Supreme Court said in Puerto Rico, yeah, you can't. They only have some of the rights, but Puerto Rico is basically foreign in a domestic sense. Okay, think about what that means. Foreign in a domestic sense.
And when you mentioned the flag, I don't think they fly the American flag in Puerto Rico, though, right? They have that beautiful flag.
They do.
They use on
they do some.
They do.
Okay, so in 1917, during World War I, Puerto Ricans became citizens of the United States. Okay, God bless America. But they didn't have all the rights of people in the United States, right? They were not afforded the right to vote in congressional elections. They were not afforded the right to vote in presidential elections. Later, they were given some limited home rule, but they can't vote. Like, so if you don't like what's going on there, you can't say, let's vote the bastards out. You just have to deal with it. And so what that means is that when they had an economic crisis, it was people in the United States, not in Puerto Rico, that imposed a board of trustees, right? And they're called a junta, and they make all the decisions in Puerto Rico. So if you want to tee up the song El Apagón. Okay. Just tee that up. Okay, this is like, we're going to take a music break because I think I've gotten through my long-winded portion.
Okay.
And so we need a musical interlude.
Está bien cabrón, de Carolina sale reggaetón y los hijueputas de Bayamón. Ey, Ey, quieren montarse en la ola y no han ido a rincón. Un besito pa' abuela en el balcón cogiendo.
It's a
Okay,
Bad Bunny song?
yeah, that's good. That's Bad Bunny. Okay, so this song's called El Apagón. Okay, you could stop it. This is public education, everybody. Okay, so that's called El Apagón, which means the blackout. Because of the way that things are structured in Puerto Rico, they don't have control over. They don't have direct control over the public utility, and they're trying to sell the public utility. So they keep facing blackouts in Puerto Rico. So that's what Bad Bunny's singing about. And in the middle of that song, there's a whole documentary about the history of Puerto Rico, right in that video, right?
Oh, wow.
And so it's no surprise that right now, the average income in Puerto Rico is 50% that of Mississippi, the poorest state. So Puerto Rico is a very, very poor part of the United States, and they can't vote the bastards out, so to speak.
And I'm sure Hurricane Maria did nothing for that.
And then Hurricane Maria's part, because there's no political incentive to make sure that you provided services to that community. And of course, you have the famous photo of the president throwing paper towels in a very kind of callous way. And so what's happened is that Puerto Rico's lost 10% of the population. Like there's more Puerto Ricans living in the United States that live in the archipelago of Puerto Rico. So that's that's Bad Bunny, right? But he's American, right? And most Americans don't want to think about, hey, we might have a colony, right? Because we fought against colonialism, right? Remember King George? We fought against kings. The idea that we have people that are U.S. citizens that don't have this political voice and that are living relatively to the United States in poverty without any self-determination, that is something that I think more people should know. And that's why I say this is a teaching moment. And that's Bad Bunny's world. So people say, hey, but is Bad Bunny loyal to the United States? I would flip the question and say this allows us to ask, is the United States loyal to Puerto Rico? Right? Do we dedicate them? And I think a lot of the reaction has been that many people still see Puerto Ricans as foreign in the domestic sense, right? That they're not really, they don't belong to our community. And what that does is not only, I think, insults Puerto Ricans, but insults really the history of linguistic diversity in the country, the indigenous languages. New Mexico, as a condition of joining the Union, was able to retain Spanish, right? Texas has Amarillo and San Antonio and Los Angeles, and there's a history of linguistic diversity in the country. The first big Supreme Court case about linguistic diversity involved an effort to ban the use of German in the schools, right? This is a history of the country, and so this touches on all of that, right? The whole thing is like, well, he doesn't sing in English, or this is America speak English. Really is ahistorical. It doesn't talk about where the United States is now. The United States now is the second largest Spanish-speaking country in the world after Mexico. And it doesn't talk about the antecedents of this country, the indigenous languages, the long history of Spanish and German and other languages in the country. So and
yet we still have a lot of movements. English-only movements are still being introduced at a federal level sometimes, at local levels. So we really haven't come to terms with this multilingual past.
And President Trump signed many executive orders, but he signed one designating English as official language. And he says that we have one and only one official language. Establishing English as the official language will not only streamline communication, but also reinforce shared national values and create a more cohesive and efficient setting. But I think the reality that we live and we know is that people who come here speaking Spanish, they try to learn English, right? And some people have various levels of success. But here, what Bad Bunny challenges listeners around the world, including the United States, to do is, hey, I love the music, I love the beat, I want to dance to it. What's he singing about, right? And it just kind of forces us to sort of get into his superpower, right? And the superpower of bilingualism. And I don't think that's bad.
That was a wonderful walkthrough of U.S. empire history, how Puerto Rico became what it is today, the territory it is today. I'm sure we have other places that are similar, right? We have other territories around the world as well. But for some reason, we seem to have, I'm thinking Tonga. I don't know if Tonga is a territory or Samoa, But
American Samoa, yeah.
we have a lot more Puerto Ricans that are here in the U.S. than we do Samoans, I would guess, and
Yeah,
they've
yeah.
just enjoyed that migration, or maybe it's been forced upon them, but they've been able to travel back and forth.
They call that the air bridge, and I know Brother Juan has spent a lot of time in Chicago, and Puerto Ricans have been very instrumental. But I think in the United States, you look at Lin-Manuel Miranda, right, who wrote this sort of brilliant remake of American history with Hamilton. You think about Rita Moreno, you think about Jose Feliciano, you just think of like so many people who have been so integral to like the culture of this country, who were part of this Puerto Rican diaspora, right? And then the whole idea of salsa music is something that I have to be very careful here because the Cubans
and Cubans have a very
and Puerto Ricans fight over who started it, right? And they both did in their own way. But what happened with the Puerto Rican diaspora in New York is they brought in the trombone and they brought in the clave, and they gave it their own thing. And so salsa, people are like, salsa music, that's foreign music, whatever. But salsa music is, again, a product of the United States. And so one of the songs...
I've never considered calling salsa music homegrown music, but
because
it really
because it's beloved throughout the world, right? It's beloved throughout the world. But it, 1975, the Fania All-Stars performed in Yankee Stadium, right? And that was sort of like the salsa music blowing up in the United States. Wasn't an import. It's
with New Yorkers probably, and other Puerto Ricans from the island.
With the New Yorkers, but the politics that you had back then, the politics that gave us, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Sonia Sotomayor, are the politics that you still see here. And again, it's like flipping the question, because people don't ask. People are like, well, do they feel American? And the question is, do you treat them as belonging in this community? Do you respect them? Do you respect Puerto Rico, for its cultural distinctiveness as you would cultural distinctiveness in any other part of this country? Right.
And I really love how you lay that out, and how that's part of the history of this country, because on a more base level, I think I hear a lot from critics of various in these cultural wars a lot of times is the Latinos. To me, it breaks down to the Latinos are coming, and they don't want to learn English. And I think you've just dispelled a lot of the thinking that goes into that kind of mindset with your description.
Well, I think Lin-Manuel Miranda speaks English extremely well, as anyone who's seen Hamilton, can attest. And I'm here at ASU, and I'm sitting in the midst of the Indian legal program, probably the best Indian law program in the country. And this state, has the history of the Navajo code talkers and the Dene, and just sort of multiple languages. And like the Dene, the Puerto Ricans have really one of the highest records of service in the U.S. military of any group in the United States. Yet we're here having Bad Bunny like criticized as somehow being other, and largely because he refuses to be othered. He just wants to be who he is. I heard a great quote by Becky G. Is like something.
Becky G, the Colombian singer.
No, Becky G's Mexican American.
Right,
from California.
Okay.
Carol.
Yeah, Carol G.
Got to get it down, brother.
I know. I'm behind.
Got to get down. But Becky G is like it's like we don't want to try not to be us because we love us, and that's Bad Buddy. Like he loves Puerto Rico. He did a residency in Puerto Rico, where he performed there, and people came from all over the world. It was such a boom for the economy. People came from all over the world. I have students, like you have photos of like I saw one critic podcast. Some of these people just are trolling, but he's like, Bad Bunny hates white people. Well, Bad Bunny doesn't hate John Hamm, because you see like photos of John Hamm there, like dancing, and Adam Sandler, and all those folks, right? I mean, there are a lot of people who are on the Bad Bunny train. Just because Mike Johnson hasn't heard of him doesn't mean that train hasn't long left the station, right? And what I would suggest is, I don't know what kind of music Mike Johnson listens to, but I know that there was a petition going around that has many signatures saying, why don't we put George Strait there, right? Man, I love George Strait. And I keep thinking like Bad Bunny's going to pull George Strait there on the stage with him. Like George Strait, you know, sings from the soul. George Strait is badass. I don't know what his politics are, right? I mean, if I found out that he's like, yeah, I'm into mass deportation and mass torture, whatever, I'd be disappointed. But his songs are his songs. It's going to be like Kanye. Like, I don't understand what Kanye's politics are. I know they're not mine. I don't know if he understands, but Kanye's Kanye, right? Kanye's brilliant, right? And George Strait, I think when you start comparing, like, you know, like, okay, let me give you an example. So Bad Bunny sings a song called Nueva York. So he Hispanicizes New York, and this is based on an old salsa song called Verano en Nueva York, Spring in New York. And anybody who's been spring in New York is like, oh my God, it's the most amazing thing. Like everybody's out. It's just like New York is like, to me, it always felt like the quintessential American city. But I guess to others, it feels foreign and alien. I don't know, like Chicago. It depends where you're sitting. But he sings that. George Strait sings Amarillo by Morning, right? So what he does is flips it. He anglicizes Amarillo, right? And the song is like, I'm in Amarillo by morning, up from San Antonio. So what he does is he takes San Antonio and Amarillo, and he anglicizes it. He just sort of flips the same thing, but you can't hide from that. Like this George Strait's a brother from south of San Antonio. He's a South Texas boy, right? And he knows this music. And the crazy thing is, tee this up, brother. I want you to tee this up.
Well, and I'm gonna tee up El Rey.
Okay, tee this up. I want to talk about this. I want to just give you a quote because George Strait's going to solve this argument if there is an argument, right? I mean,
here we go.
If people say Bad Bunny's not American, there ain't no argument. That's just ignorance.
Sé que tendrás que llorar, 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 llorar. Dirás que no me quisiste, pero vas a estar muy triste y así te vas a quedar. Con dinero y sin dinero.
Okay, so this is George Strait. Okay, he's from South Texas. He grew up, right? He gave a benefit concert for all the victims of that horrible mass killing in Uvalde, Texas, right? And most of them were, you know, Latino children, many born in Mexico, right? And when they asked him about this, here's what he said. He goes, I've loved mariachi music for years, right? Although I'm not fluent in Spanish, I've been trying to get better. El Rey has been a favorite song of mine for years, and I request it every chance I get. So I decided to give it a shot. What a blast that was. I had versions by the great Vicente Fernandez, a hero. I played it for the guys and we worked it out. I hope the real mariachis like it. Like this is like just a musician admiring good music, right? He admires good music. He opens his heart. He opens his mind. Like this is his world. Like he's in a bilingual world in South Texas, and El Rey is a song that he's heard, and he grew up, I'm sure, around a lot of Mexicanos that sang El Rey, and he respects it so much. He doesn't say, "This is America, only sing in English." Right. Like why do I want to sing in English?
He does get a part on the bill.
I'm in South Texas where Spanish has been spoken, you know, before the border changed, right? And I'm going to pay homage to not only the music, but to my fans, right? By singing El Rey. And there's a video on YouTube of him singing it in San Antonio. The crowd goes wild, almost like Bad Bunny wild. Not completely Bad Bunny wild, but almost Bad Bunny wild, because they're like, he's singing to us, right?
I will say, if he does get a part on that bill, on that show, he needs to sing El Rey. That would be awesome.
I mean, that's my fantasy that Bad Bunny's going to bring him out, and then George Strait is going to sing El Rey, right? And then the other one that we were kind of joking about offline, and I don't have enough confidence to pull up my graphics, but there's a very famous song called Titi Me Preguntó. That seems to be the one that everyone's grabbing a hold of. And Titi is like his aunt. That's sort of like a
Titi, right?
Tia, my aunt, right? So different cultures say different things for like auntie or nana or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like Titi. Okay, so Titi is an American, U.S. citizen like him, like they can't be any other. And it's about like, do you have a girlfriend? And then he goes into all of the girlfriend. He goes into all the girlfriends he has, right? And so he starts talking about. And I was going to pull it up, and I wanted to count it. See if I have a graphic on this. He goes, me gusta mucho Gabriela. He has Gabriela. He has Patricia. He has Nicole. That's 3. He has Sophia. And his first girlfriend in kindergarten was Maria, right? There's 5 in that song. So, hey, that's bad values, man. This guy's like a playboy, right? So maybe I'm down with the cause. Get rid of Bad Bunny, right? And let's bring in somebody else, right? But we can't bring in George Strait. As one of his most famous songs is "All My Exes Live in Texas."
Right.
So he's got Rosanna down in Texarkana. He's got Sweet Eileen in Abilene. He's got Alliston in Galveston. Somehow lost her sanity. And of course, there's Dimples, who lives in Temple, and she's got the law looking for me. So not only is he like a philandering playboy, he did something that made him run off to Tennessee, right? And so, that's a little bit of like the outlaw that lives in country music mythology, and so is Bad Bunny, right? They just come together. I'm just saying they come together, and this is just music, and these are stories, and it's beautiful. And I'm just saying, I'll leave it to George Strait, and he just like I'm open-minded on this, right?
Well, brother, that was a excellent take on this whole controversy, and we get to see it from a whole new light, some of us, and really look at the antecedents to these arguments and why it really isn't a controversy, and maybe some of the arguments should be flipped, as you say. So I think we've got a good taste of it. Does anyone want to make any last questions or comments before we wrap this show up?
I want to jump into one more thing, because I don't want to gloss over this, is that, that no doubt Bad Bunny has been very critical of ICE raids in Puerto Rico and across the country. And in Puerto Rico is mostly the longstanding Dominican community, and he's basically like the racial profiling, right? And a lot has been made of the fact that he doesn't want, he didn't schedule any dates outside of Puerto Rico in the United States because he was concerned for his fans, right? He was concerned for his fans, because you don't have to be a citizen to see a culture, to see a concert, right? You don't. Just like you don't have to be to watch the Super Bowl. And he spoke out on that, and people are like, well, that's un-American, but it really isn't. That's just as American as apple pie to have a disagreement about this. And I think right now the polls are showing, that President Bush has overreached on this issue. New York Times recent poll says 52% of Mr. Trump's handling of immigration, the immigration issue, 50% said his actions around immigration have gone too far. So he's not going out on a limb. And what he's also doing, because these are communities that he knows firsthand, maybe Mike Johnson doesn't know it, right? Maybe some of the podcasters don't know these, but he's seen how these actions are busting up families, right? Busting up mixed status families with American children, and taking away good people, working people, and just forcing them to live in terror. And he's standing up. You don't have to agree with that. You don't have to agree with me on that. And like I said, if George Strait is like, I think everything you said, Lopez, is full of shit, I'm like, thank you, I respect your opinion, but I love your music still. Just like I tell Kanye West, like, keep it coming, man, but I don't know anything you're talking about. I don't know, when you speak outside of your music, I have no clue what you're talking about, where that's coming from, right?
Okay. Well, Juan, did you want to? I mean, we could wrap it up now. I think we went over our time limit a little bit, but what the heck? Is there another question?
Well, not so much a question, David, thank you for coming on and just breaking everything down for us. It was really enjoyable, and you did it in a way where we learned a few things. But getting back to Bad Bunny, I mean, he's very proud of being Puerto Rican. He's very proud of being Latino. In fact, when he's done a few movies, he was just in Happy Gilmore 2, and he was in Bullet Train with Brad Pitt and a few others. And
Brad Pitt loves on him too. Like everyone meets him, loves on him.
But what I found unique about those movies, in fact, Bad Bunny plays a Mexican cartel guy in the movie, and Bullet Train.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
yeah.
Yeah.
He plays a cartel guy, and he's a hitman. But what I noticed, when I
I'm
first
gonna
saw the
cross my
movie,
arms.
the thing I found unique about it, his movie credit is not Bad Bunny. He goes on as his full name.
Benito.
Oh, does he?
That's how important it is to him.
Mhm.
His name is very Spanish. I mean, it's you can't get more Spanish name than that. That's almost like me, like Juan Alfredo Rodriguez Martinez.
Well, now I'm going to go into like my provincial hometown homer mode and ask, why is it that Freddie Prinze played a Chicano and Chico and the Man, and J-Lo played Selena, and Bad Bunny's playing a Mexican hitman, right? No, this is an ongoing like back and forth I have with one of my colleagues at
Well,
Rutgers.
it works a lot of different ways.
No, I
So
know.
what's your name?
I'm just playing on that, but I just like I'm like, that's good, and
Well, at least John Leguizamo got to play an Italian in Son of Sam. So
well,
it was a
Lin-Manuel
little
Miranda
reverse.
played Alexander Hamilton, so
Mhm.
so we can do it.
That's a whole different podcast.
Yeah, that's a lot. There's a lot on that. I got a lot of thoughts on that, and then
There is. I got
there are a lot of. I think Hamilton's a product of its time. It's brilliant. Like the music's brilliant, the rhyme's brilliant. But I'm not sure if it's dated itself well, but I think the production itself.
I think it's appropriate to end this podcast by saying "Viva Boricua!"
Yeah, and go. Everybody go. Yeah.
And watch the Super Bowl and go to a Bad Bunny concert.
La Isla de Encanto. Yeah, go.
And go to La Isla Encanta. Exactly.
You may not like. I know a lot of us old timers, had a hard time getting into Bad Bunny too. We got to be real. We can't act like we can't act like we've been into Bad Bunny all along. I am. I work with young people. I work with young people, so they're like, So I go. I know who butters my bread, right? But it gets to you, man. After a while, it's good. It's good stuff. It's brilliant.
Okay, and this was a good podcast. And with that, I want to say, one, thank you, David Lopez, for sharing your insights with us. Juan Rodriguez for always being there for us as our co-host. And I'd also like to thank our audio engineer and technical director, Ron Hoyos, for always bringing us quality video and audio to these podcasts. And with that, I would only say, remember to like and subscribe to this channel, YouTube channel, so we can continue bringing you content like this. And with this, I would like to say thank you very much for appearing and have a great day, everybody.